Welcome back to the deep dive. You know, usually when we crack open a new topic, we're looking at a stack of business reviews or maybe some dense new scientific paper.
Right, we're mining for data.
We're mining for hard facts. But today, our source material is, well, it feels more like a ghost story.
That's one way to put it. It's certainly a eulogy.
Yeah. We're looking at just one single, deeply personal document. It's a blog post from June 3rd, 2018, titled Okula Veda, which translates to Farewell to School.
And it was written by a student graduating from Marmara University's Faculty of Communication in Istanbul.
But it's not just about graduation, is it? That's just the surface level.
Exactly. I mean, if you read between the lines, this is a perfect case study in what environmental psychologists call place attachment.
Place attachment.
It's about what happens when the physical container of your memories is just taken away.
Because that's the real hook here.
Yeah.
The author isn't just leaving the school itself is leaving. The historic Nishantasha campus was closing down, moving, right as the student was graduating. So you get this collision of personal history ending at the exact same moment that physical history is being erased.
It creates this really unique pressure cooker of emotions.
Mhm.
Usually you can go back. You can visit your old college campus.
Right, you can show your kids the library where you crammed for finals.
Exactly. But this author is grappling with the fact that they're the last witness. After their class, the place as they knew it just ceases to exist.
So our mission today is to unpack that experience. We're going to look at the universal struggle of moving on, the friction between family expectations and your own dreams, and why we sometimes fall in love with, frankly, ugly, dilapidated buildings.
And why we grieve them like people when they're gone.
Okay, let's start with the setting. Because if you're picturing a glossy Ivy League brochure, this ain't it.
Oh, not at all.
The relationship with this campus did not start with love. It started with horror.
Absolute horror. The source is so explicit about this. The author describes their very first visit to the campus. This is before classes even started.
So they're eager, a little anxious probably.
Right, and they go to scout the location just to avoid getting lost on the first day.
Which ironically they did anyway.
They did. They got lost in Masa, wandering around this really upscale, trendy part of Istanbul, looking for this prestigious university. And when they finally found it,
Just total deflation.
complete deflation. The author looks at the building and thinks, this looks like a high school.
And not even a good one. They say their own high school looked more like a university than this place did.
Exactly.
That is such a gut punch. You know, you forget how much weight you put on the look of success at that age. You spend years fighting through these incredibly brutal entrance exams, dreaming of university life. You have a movie in your head.
And then you arrive on set, and it's a crumbling old building.
It just shatters the fantasy. The disappointment was so severe that the author actually refused to go to school on the very first day.
Yeah. It wasn't just, oh, this is ugly. It was a total rejection.
Yeah.
Like, they felt cheated. I fought so hard to get in, and this is it.
It's the classic expectation gap. But this is where the deep dive gets really interesting for me. If we fast forward 4 years to when this post was written, that ugly high school building has completely transformed in the author's mind.
Completely. By the end, that same dilapidated building is described as a yuva.
Which translates to nest or home.
But exactly, a place of safety. A refuge.
So how does that happen? How do you get from, I refuse to even enter this building, to this is my sanctuary?
It's a phenomenon called the mere exposure effect, but I think it's combined with shared hardship. The author stops talking about the architecture, the walls, the paint, and starts talking about the sensory details of the life inside.
This soft infrastructure.
Right. They talk about the lush green garden, but more importantly, the rituals. Drinking tea at Selimabi's. Eating pizzas made by Koreabi.
I love that they name-check the staff. It's not just the cafeteria, it's Koreabi. Abi means big brother in Turkish. It implies this level of respect and closeness. You don't call a random service worker Abi unless there's a real bond there.
It just proves the idea that the soul of an institution has almost nothing to do with the bricks and mortar. It's the social network. The author writes, Marmara communication is a value, sometimes with its professors, sometimes with its garden, but mostly with its friendships.
So the building being broken and dilapidated actually became part of the charm.
I think so. It reminds me of the IKEA effect, You love it more because you had to struggle with it.
Right. If it had been some perfect, sterile glass campus, maybe they wouldn't have bonded so tightly.
I think you're spot on. Shared suffering, even if it's just a drafty lecture hall, creates a much tighter community than luxury ever could. It forces people together.
And that bond makes the move so devastating. The author is adamant this isn't just a relocation. They write, Marmara communication is dying in Nishantasha.
Such strong language. Dying.
It suggests the school's identity was completely tied to that specific place. You can move the desks, you can move the logo, but you can't move the ghosts.
And this brings us right to that ship of Theseus paradox. If you replace the building, the location, the graduating class, is it even the same school?
The author clearly thinks no. They see the class of 2018 as the last guardians of the real thing.
But before we get to the funeral, we have to talk about the birth.
The origin story.
Yeah, we have to go back to a very specific summer day in 2014.
This part of the source is incredibly cinematic. It feels like the opening scene of a movie.
It really does. So we're in Sivas, central Turkey, geographically, culturally. This is just a world away from trendy Nişantaşı in Istanbul.
Sivas is the heartland. Rugged, historical.
And the author isn't just in Sivas, they're in a field. It's a hot summer day, sun beating down, and they're physically loading hay onto a trailer. This is hard manual labor.
I can picture it perfectly. Dust, sweat, the smell of dry grass.
And then the phone rings. It's the father's phone. The aunt is calling.
With the news.
With the news. You got in. You've been accepted to the radio, TV, and cinema department at Marmara University.
Now, in an American movie, this is the moment the music swells, everyone throws hay in the air, big hugs all around. You made it, kid.
Right. But this isn't that movie. This is a moment of profound cultural friction. The family did not rejoice.
They were disappointed.
The source says they were sad.
But why? Their kid just got into a major university in Istanbul. I mean, that's a ticket out of the hayfield.
Is it, though? Look at the major.
Yeah.
Radio, TV, and cinema.
Ah.
You have to see it from the perspective of a family working in a field in Anatolia. They want security, a guaranteed profession, a lawyer, an engineer, a doctor, a teacher.
To them, cinema sounds like unemployment.
Exactly. It sounds like a gamble, a hobby. The author notes that the family eventually accepted it, but the compromise was so telling. They said, well, at least it's a 4-year school.
At least it's 4 years. Wow, that is a low bar.
That's the better-than-nothing acceptance. So think about the psychological backpack this student is carrying. They're leaving the fields of Sivas, carrying the weight of their family's disappointment.
To prove that this hobby is a career. And then they get lost in Masta and find a building that looks like a dump.
Exactly. It's a miracle they didn't just turn around and go home. It would have been so easy to say, you know what? You were all right. I'll go be a teacher.
It really highlights the resilience you need. You're fighting a war on 2 fronts. Convincing your family you made the right choice, and convincing yourself when reality looks so grim.
And that struggle defines the whole 4-year arc. The source explicitly mentions the bookends of their academic career to show this growth.
Right. They remember the very first lesson with a professor named Ibran Demir.
And then the final exam, just a few days before writing this post, with Ali Murad Kurik.
Radio, TV, journalism. I like that detail. It grounds the whole thing. It wasn't just lofty dreams of being a director. It was exams, grades, Friday afternoons.
And in between those two names, Demir and Kurik, is the whole coming-of-age story. The author mentions an Erasmus experience, which means they traveled abroad.
That's a huge leap from Sivas.
A massive leap.
Yeah.
They went from loading hay to navigating Europe. That is incredible social mobility in just 4 years.
And they talk about finding a huge family of friends. But the part that really gets me is the dream. The author says they came to school wanting to be a screenwriter. And despite the ugly building, despite the family doubt, they write, my screenwriting dream is still in my pocket.
But the pocket is heavier now.
Much heavier. It's full of memories, and it's full of what the author calls sadness. But you told me before we started that there's a deeper context to that word.
There is. The Turkish concept of huzun.
Huzun. It's often translated as melancholy, isn't it? But that feels a bit too simple.
It is. It's a communal kind of sadness. It isn't just, I feel sad. It's a shared mood of loss and longing. The author reflects on their whole 17-year education journey, starting from primary school. They remember being an 8-year-old kid looking at the sea of other children and thinking, how will this ever end?
Oh, I think we've all had that moment. Looking at the calendar in 3rd grade and thinking high school graduation is a lifetime away. It feels like a prison sentence.
But now that the sentence is served, the dominant emotion isn't the relief they expected. It's this huzun, this deep, aching sadness that the struggle is over.
We miss the war because we miss the comrades.
Precisely. We miss who we were during the struggle.
And speaking of comrades, or maybe something more, we have to talk about the romance. Because what's a college story without some unrequited love?
It's a staple of the genre, isn't it? The author admits that the school gave them love. But in true dramatic fashion, it was a one-sided affair.
They describe it as this complex situation. What if she loves me back? That kind of thing. But they say it inspired them to write poetry.
And I love that connection. The school didn't just teach them how to hold a camera. It gave them the emotional turbulence that forced them to become a poet. It helped them discover themselves through that longing.
It fits the screenwriter profile perfectly. You need that emotional depth. You need to know what it feels like to want something you can't have.
And the author acknowledges this. They say the school gave them love, even if it wasn't the fairy tale ending.
But the fairy tale definitely ends for the campus itself. And this is where the source gets really dark in a poetic way. The author explicitly calls this blog post a condolence message, a tazi.
That is a very powerful choice of words. A tazi is what you offer at a funeral. The author writes, verbatim, "Our school is dead."
Our school is dead. Not closed, not relocated, dead.
This brings us right back to that idea of place attachment. The author believes that the specific combination of that garden, that dilapidated building, the neighborhood, the people, that unique alchemy cannot be transferred.
It's like trying to move a coral reef. You can take the fish and put them in a new tank, but you haven't moved the reef. You've destroyed it and built an aquarium.
That is a perfect analogy. By moving the faculty to a new, probably modern campus, the administration isn't saving the school. In the author's eyes, they're killing its spirit. The Nishantasha's spirit was defined by its flaws.
The author sees themselves, the class of 2018, as the last people to know the real thing.
The last guardians of the memory. They say, we are leaving and the spirit of the school is leaving with us.
But is it entirely dead? There's a really specific reference the author makes about the legacy, a question they imagine a future student asking.
Yes. Have you still not watched Umut?
Umut. For anyone who doesn't know, Umut, which means hope, is a legendary Turkish film, kind of the Bicycle Thieves of Turkish cinema, realist, gritty, heartbreaking.
And by referencing that specific film, the author is admitting that some things will survive. The DNA of the school, the culture of cinema, conversations, the shared canon, that will happen in the new buildings too.
So the walls change, but the conversation continues.
It continues. But for this author, the container mattered just as much as the content. They end by thanking the campus directly. Goodbye, Marmara Communication, who lived in Nishantasha and died there.
It's a finality that doesn't allow for a sequel. The new campus is a new life, but a different entity entirely.
It's such a beautiful, melancholic way to look at graduation. Usually we're told, the world is your oyster, or the future is bright. This is, we survived, we loved, and now we bury the past.
And honestly, I think that's a healthier way to process it. Graduation is a loss. Moving is a loss. We are so obsessed with progress that we rarely stop to conduct the funeral for the version of ourselves we're leaving behind.
Acknowledging the death of a phase is what allows you to actually move on.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are we really looking at? We have a student who went from loading hay in a field to writing poetry in Istanbul, a building that went from a disappointing high school to a beloved nest.
And we have the inevitable passage of time. The takeaway here is that we don't just attend schools or live in houses, we survive them. They become part of our identity. And when we leave them, or when they're destroyed, a version of us ceases to exist too.
It really makes you look at your own surroundings differently. That coffee shop you go to every day, that weird crack in the wall of your office, one day, those won't be there.
Or you won't be there. And you might actually miss the crack in the wall more than you'd miss fresh paint. You almost certainly will. It's the dilapidated parts of life we often bond with the hardest.
Perfection is easy to admire, but flaws are what we fall in love with.
Exactly. The author fell in love with a broken school because it was their broken school.
That is a powerful thought. So here's the question we want to leave you with today. The author of this blog post went from dreading the endless length of their education to mourning its sudden end. They realized, maybe too late, that the temporary struggle was actually the good old days.
So ask yourself, what is a temporary phase in your life right now? Maybe it's a job you're just trying to get through, a chaotic apartment you're renting, or a city you're planning to leave. Is there a chance that 10 years from now, you'll look back on this imperfect temporary moment as a lost home?
Something to chew on. Thanks for diving deep with us today.
See you next time.